I'd like to relate the Christian life to flying an airplane. I've been a pilot for about 27 years, and it's not something I do a whole lot anymore. I'm 76 years old, so I'm thinking my flying days are going to be coming to an end before too long here. But I've really enjoyed it, and it's something I always anticipated learning to do, hopefully, when I grew up as a kid. I used to make model airplanes and dream of flying in them and flying them anyway. And so anyway, when I stopped teaching and we hadn't had children, been married for over 25 years, and I thought, well, if I'm ever going to pursue this dream, now is probably the time. And I started out, Barb wasn't too much in favor of it, so I took an exploratory ride in an ultralight first, see how I liked that, and I did like it. And I went over to Erie and took some lessons over there. There's an ultralight airport over there, and I did quite well with it. And my pilot friend that tutored me encouraged me quite a bit, and I ended up buying a single place ultralight, and it wasn't one of these things that looks like a flying lawn chair. It looked like a real airplane. And it really handled much like an airplane too. I really learned a lot in it and had a lot of fun in it. After I flew it for about a year, Barb said, well, you know, since you're doing pretty good in it, you haven't killed yourself yet, you must not have a death wish, so maybe we ought to get a real airplane, and then we could go places and do things together. And with her limited time as a veterinarian, it really worked out quite well and made a lot of sense. We ended up getting in a couple of clubs first, and then we bought our own airplane. We bought a Cessna 182, which is a really stable, nice airplane, kind of like a limousine car. It's a 4-passenger, and we found out we could take the back seats out and load our bicycles in there and fly somewhere. We went up to Wisconsin and Minnesota. You fly up there, ride your bikes for the day, and come back the same day. So we had a lot of really exciting trips and fun trips doing that. But anyway, that's just kind of a background. After I'd been flying for a little while, I thought it'd be a good idea to get an instrument rating. I've been reading a lot of stories, being interested in flying, of people who would fly into bad weather and end up crashing their airplane. I thought that makes perfect sense to get an instrument rating so you know how to control the airplane if you inadvertently get into bad weather in clouds or rain or whatever. And so I did that. I took an accelerated course where a guy came to my house, and we actually went flying and did bookwork every day for a week. And at the end of that week, we went down to, where was it, Barb? Not Quincy, but somewhere down in that general area. And I took a check ride and I passed. So I was very happy about that. So anyway, flying related to living the Christian life is kind of my talk, and I've got 7 points that I came up with tonight, so we'll kind of go through that. First of all, know your equipment and check it over very carefully before each flight. That was a very important thing, one of the first lessons that you learn. You walk around the airplane, you make sure everything's working, you check the controls, that they're moving freely. You look in the gas tank, you don't just check the gauge, but you actually look in it each time to make sure that you've got enough gas in it. Then I was trying to think of some Bible verses that would relate to that, knowing your equipment and checking carefully between each flight, and 2 Timothy came to mind. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needed not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Let's see, number 2, watch for bad conditions and avoid if possible. Make a U-turn if necessary. That's one of the first things that you learn as a new pilot, that if the weather looks bad ahead, don't just plow into it and hope it gets better, but turn around and go back and find better weather. And the corollary with that to the Christian life would be to flee. I came up with 1 Corinthians 10:14, wherefore my dearly beloved, flee from idolatry. 1 Timothy 6:11, but thou, O man of God, flee these things, but rather follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, meekness. 2 Timothy 2:22, flee also youthful lusts, but follow righteousness, faith, charity, peace, and them that call on the Lord out of a pure heart. And James 4:7, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Another thing that goes along with flying is be aware of other traffic. That's one thing that you learn right away. Look out the window. Don't just concentrate on what's in front of you, but be looking around, see and avoid. And let's see, okay. Number 3, don't be afraid to ask for help when you're in trouble. As you learn to fly, you learn to talk to air traffic control and to communicate on the radio. You want to let people know who you are, where you are, and what you want to do. And that's something we do even at the Geneseo airport. Anytime I'm up flying, if I'm anywhere near the airport, I do that. I give my call sign and say, I'm so-and-so up here and I'm flying in the area, or I'm going to be landing, and tell them what I'm going to be doing. Let's see, number 4, if in doubt, land and wait it out. And the old saying goes, better on the ground wishing you were in the air than in the air wishing you were on the ground. Those old salt sayings, and it's very true. Psalm 27:14, wait on the Lord and be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Psalm 41, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. And also Isaiah 40:31, another favorite verse of mine. Trust your instruments. As a pilot, you learn to look at all the instruments in the airplane, your altitude, your tachometer, your engine temperature, oil pressure, all these things. You learn to scan them, your digital. Actually, when I learned to fly, they were all round. They call them steam gauges. They're just little pointers, but now everything's electronic. The newer airplanes all have computer screens, as Jonathan well knows. He works on this stuff. And in 1 or 2 screens, they have about every piece of information you could ever want about your airplane, what's going on with the motor and everything else, the airspeed indicator and all that stuff. So trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not unto thine own understanding, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, one of my favorite verses. In IMC, without training, disorientation and crash will likely occur within seconds. This is one of the things I learned. IMC is instrument meteorological conditions. In other words, if you fly into a cloud or into a rainstorm or something, if you don't have your mind on the instruments, you're going down. There's no doubt about it, if you haven't had the training. And I've heard a lot of people that's happened to. It has happened to me, but fortunately I trusted my instruments because I had that training. So you definitely need the training. Keep your head and use your training. 2 Timothy 2:15, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And number 7, probably most importantly, don't do anything stupid. You're probably not as good as you think you are if you need to show off. This is one of the things that really gripes me about some pilots, and there's some up at our Geneseo airport that insist on doing that. I won't name names, but there are certain people that insist on zooming down the airport, blowing smoke, and other ones that cross the runway at a low altitude and do a big pull-up and come around and land. And it's very showy and impressive, but I mean, there's danger in that too. There's risk anytime you do stupid stuff like that. Okay, let's see. The famous last words of the pilot. Now watch this. And another famous adage is, there are old pilots and there are bold pilots, but there are no old bold pilots. So, oh boy, let's see if I had anything else here. I think that's about it. Not a real long talk, but from the heart, and I hope you learned something from it. So.